Okay, Grandpa, we're here. It's June 16th, 2002, and we're interviewing Fred Priest. And Fred Priest is 81 years old. Is that correct, Fred?
That is correct.
And I made out a list of questions for Fred Farkel, I think on Monday or Tuesday, and he's looked at them. And this is just to get a little bit of background on the Priest family and our history, because Grandpa was born in 1921, 22.
February 26, 21.
21.
At the smell of delicious sips coffee and the sound of the blacksmith at Amble.
All right, Grandpa. Now that you mention that, what is where were you born? What is the Priest? Where does your history start?
Well, the Priest really moved to Indiana from Kentucky, and they received a land grant in Putnam County, Indiana.
What year was that?
Now I'm going to say in around the middle 1850s,
Okay.
along in that area. And that's the Priest family started there and were farmers. And my grandfather Priest had the L.C. Priest sawmill in Bainbridge. And I remember my dad was injured because his job was to keep the furnace going, and the door blew off the furnace, and he wore scars on his stomach for the rest of his life. Also, my grandfather Priest built a lot of houses in Bainbridge, and many of those houses still have occupants yet today.
And what was the mill? They milled out lumber for houses?
Yeah, I can remember as a small boy seeing the looked like big trees, laying there, big logs on these big saw, and evidently it was a steam mill because I was too young, I guess, to understand, how the energy and how it was driven and all that, but it must have been a steam sawmill, and it was a big operation back in those days.
What are your earliest memories of Bainbridge?
Well, of course, like I say, when I grew up, the blacksmith was mostly horses. My dad was an automobile mechanic and owned his own garage, but only the two vets in town, the doctor had automobiles, my dad had an automobile, the chicken house, they had a huckster wagon, and very few automobiles. US 36 went through Bainbridge.
Was that a paved road or a dirt road?
No, that was a gravel road back as far as I can remember. I remember it took us half a day to get to Indianapolis, and we would have lunch and visit, then we would spend the rest of half a day getting back to Bainbridge.
And how often did you go into Indianapolis?
Oh, we must have gone in there about once every 2 or 3 months, because my mother's sister was there, and we liked to visit. That is in the summertime. Now, I'm sure in the wintertime we didn't go that often.
Right. And did you ride horses when you were younger?
Yes, I had a pony as a boy, and a bicycle, and a basketball goal, and had a great childhood when I was a boy. Just wonderful.
And were you any good at basketball?
I beg your pardon?
Were you any good at basketball?
I thought I was, but I probably wasn't that good.
And did you just have it? Where was your basket? I mean, did you have one at your
backyard
house?
on the apple tree.
On the apple tree.
Backyard, yeah.
And was it a net and a rim, or what kind of?
Yeah, it was a rim with a net on it, and it had a real nice goal and backboard that my dad had put up on the tree. Yeah.
Now, how many brothers and sisters did you have, Grandpa?
One brother, and no sisters. So it was just the two of us.
And what was your brother's name?
Reed Priest, C. Reed.
And he died 4 or 5 years ago?
In 97, the same year that my wife passed away. He died on September 25th, and my wife passed away on December 28th.
Now, were you guys close together when you were younger?
Yes.
Were you bitter enemies?
No. We were always good friends and close, and he was very successful in business and became an attorney, and then was in the development business and was very, very successful.
Now, they had a farm, or wasn't a farm.
Well,
they had quite a bit of land.
Yeah,
Where was
they had
that?
a farm out at Fillmore, Indiana, and before they moved to Greencastle, and he had a lot of calves, and but that was not his main enterprise. That was not a money-making project. The farming wasn't.
Where did your family live in Putnam County? I know Greencastle and Bainbridge and Fillmore.
They lived in Bainbridge. Bainbridge was a very thriving community. We had 2 hardware stores, 2 restaurants, 4 lodges. There's Masonic, Eastern Star, Modern, Woodman, and Redmond. Um, we had the tavern, of course, which is a quite a big thing back at that time. Beer was 5 cents, and then that included a lot of food and everything for a nickel. And it was we had the silent movies back then. I remember Maud Collins on the Western movie when we get to the real exciting part and the horses were riding real fast. She would really pound that piano and really get that sucker going because it was all.
So someone
silent
played
movie.
the piano while the movie was
Yes,
going?
yes, that was the
You're
was the only
kidding me.
sound there was.
Right, I know.
So the silent movie
Obviously,
was
silent movie.
Maud Collins, I remember, played the piano.
Where was the
Very
movie
good.
house?
It was right downtown, which was later became a part of the grocery store. But back at that time, it was just a long room where they had some seats and had a ticket office in
Wow.
front, and the theater was set up there to have movies.
So when do you think? I mean, you've seen Bainbridge for 80 years. When was it at its peak? With the most
I would
people?
say about that time, which was, see, I was born in 21, so back about in the 20s and early 30s. So then I would say probably in the 40s it started going downhill. And
So, Grandpa, I mean, if that was a thriving time for Bainbridge, what about the Depression? I mean, do you
I
remember
was going to
that?
mention that my grandfather, L.C. Priest, was one of the founders of the Bainbridge Bank, and it did go belly up then during the Depression because it had a definite effect on the bank. And my uncle Arlie Priest was a cashier at the bank, and it was we lost the bank. It just.
And did you know if your family lost their savings?
Well, yes, my family lost a lot of money when the bank went bankrupt.
And do you remember life? I know you were just 10 years old or
Well,
9 years old, but do you remember, did anything change for you?
I know. As far as me personally is concerned, I couldn't tell you. You know, we still went swimming in Big Walnut Creek just the same as always. And the Depression, you know, I didn't know anything about the Depression.
Okay.
Didn't bother me any.
What's my next question? You mentioned basketball, the silent movies, and swimming when you were a kid. As you got older, what high school did you go to, and what did you do when you were in high school?
It was Bainbridge High School, and of course we had Bainbridge and Rochdale had a band. It was kind of unusual for two communities which were arch enemies for them to go together and have a band, which we did, and we discovered the kids on fine. It was the parents that had trouble getting along with each other, but the kids and I had as many friends in Rochdale, Indiana, as I did in Bainbridge.
And how many miles away was Rochdale?
7 miles.
7 miles.
7 miles.
And did you play an instrument in the band?
Yeah, I played the trumpet, and eventually I thought I should be in first seat, but I played second seat because Martha Ann Wilson got to play the first seat. So and she was a better trumpet player. I didn't like to admit it at the time, but she was.
Did you play basketball in high school?
Yes, I played on the B team and subbed on the A team, but I wasn't that good at basketball. I was too busy with the band and other activities.
Was you always hear about Indiana, high school basketball, and especially
Yeah.
before, I'd say in the last 20 or 30 years, it's kind of lost a little bit of what it was. Was that a focal point for the community?
Yes, because there weren't any other activities to speak of. Basketball was the enterprise. In fact, our high school gymnasium was an outstanding project back in those times for any community. I forget now how many $1,000s it cost, but there was a lot of write-ups, like a little town the size of Bainbridge could not afford that kind of a high school gymnasium, but we had a lot of good basketball teams and a lot of great basketball games, and people came from all over the country to watch the basketball games at Bainbridge.
Now, Friday nights, that was the big night.
Yes, yeah, Friday night was the basketball night.
And what if there was an away game? I mean, did people from the community go to the away games?
Yes, we had quite a following. And of course, I remember when I played basketball, we had to change clothes in the boys' room, which was always in the basement and cold, and then go outdoors in cold weather to get to the gymnasium. And that was not very comfortable. I did not enjoy basketball back then.
Well, now, you were married to Violet Ruth Priest. Did you meet Vi in high school?
Yeah.
Or did you know Vi before?
No, her family lived south of Bainbridge, and we got acquainted in high school.
And how many years younger?
She was 2 years younger than I was. She was a freshman when I was a junior, and she helped me in Latin class a lot. I had a tough time with Latin.
And she helped you with Latin?
Yeah. And then when our first date in the high school gym, we had a cakewalk. We were the first couple selected for a piece of cake. We got the first piece of cake, and the ring was in the cake, which indicated that we were going to be married. So of course we had to. I remember the teacher said we would get married, so I had to go follow through and
marry.
Get married. Yeah.
You said she lived south of town.
Yeah. Yeah.
What, was it part of Bainbridge, or was it another smaller community?
No, it was just out in the country. Out in the country, a lot of the rural people at that time. There were school buses by then, which of course was a major accomplishment over the years, because a lot of country kids and the ball players that lived in the country had to practice ball, and then after they got home at night in the country, then they had their chores to do, which often meant feeding the animals and whatever, you know.
Right. Now, Grandma Vine, I mean, I talked to her at length several times about her family, but she had a tough.
Yeah.
What did her father do?
She was raised by her grandparents. Her father was an alcoholic and more or less abandoned the children at an early age. She lived in a log cabin that her grandparents built. They had no electricity, no running water, very crude conditions. And I remember she loved school and loved to study, which she remembers she studied her lessons at a coal lantern. And that was the light they used.
She was a pretty sharp woman, wasn't she?
Very, very smart, yeah. And she enjoyed school very much.
Well, how many years did you date before you were married?
Let's see, I must have met her around 37, and we were married in 42, so we dated for about 5 years.
And you'd even gone off to Bloomington for a little bit.
Yeah, I'd gone to college a couple of years.
And she'd moved to Indianapolis.
No.
No?
Actually, when we got married, she was living near Barnard, and she was working for a family named Barnard, and their forefathers had founded Barnard, Indiana. And at the date of our wedding, the Barnards were there, and that happened to be their wedding anniversary, the day we got married on June the 14th. So it was a nice occasion.
Where did you got married? In Barnard, Indiana?
No, we got married in Bainbridge.
Bainbridge. At what church?
We were the first couple to be married in the Bainbridge Methodist Church. And that was quite a thing for us and for the church.
Sure. Now, do you remember your wedding day?
Oh, yeah, very well.
And family and friends?
Yeah, and a friend of mine, Sam Hostetter, played the violin. And Cully Price, another family friend, sang the solo at the church, and we had a very nice.
And what did you do after your wedding? Do you remember? Did you have a dinner?
Yeah, we lived in. No, let's see. I'm trying to remember. We had dinner there in the basement of the church.
Right.
Everyone that was at the wedding was invited to participate in the food and so forth. And then we lived in, and I want to say East 28th Street. I'm not sure about that address.
There in Bainbridge.
Indianapolis. In Indianapolis, because I was working at Curtis Wright at that time.
What was Curtis Wright?
We were a propeller plant. They came to Indianapolis to build propellers during the war.
During World War II?
Yeah, see, I was married in June of 42 and drafted in August of 42. We didn't think I'd go into service because I'd try to enlist.
And you'd had troubles with your eyes?
Yeah, got turned down on.
And at that point the war had been going on really a year?
Yeah, since Pearl Harbor, December 41.
Right.
So,
yeah, not quite a year.
Almost, well, not quite a year, but
right.
About 8 months at least, yeah.
And when did you, so you got into the service, and you were drafted in 42. And where were you stationed first, and what did you do during the war?
See, of course, I took my basic at St. Petersburg, Florida. Then I went to airplane mechanic school at Gulfport, Mississippi. Radial engine school in the Washington Airport at Washington, D.C. with the Western Airlines. Aerial Engineer School at Salt Lake City, Utah with Pennsylvania Central Airlines. And then I was assigned at Reno, Nevada. And that's where our first son, David, then was born in Reno.
My dad.
And yeah.
And how long were you in Reno?
About a year. I was stationed in Reno, Nevada about a year. And then I went from there to Love Field, Dallas, Texas, about a year.
And then you got out of it. Well, you got out of active duty when the war ended.
Yeah, when in December '45, I went off of active duty and went into the Air Force Reserve.
Now, even though you weren't in the you were in the war and you served during the war, you weren't in Asia and you weren't in Europe. What do you remember about that time in America? I mean, What are your thoughts and recollections about World War II and
Well,
how
I
people
remember
felt?
my wife and I were both smoking at that time. I remember cigarettes were hard to find. They were rationed, of course, and they were hard to get. Tobacco, coffee was there was a shortage of coffee. It was hard to get. Uh, we didn't have much money, of course, when I was in service, because I was still a private when she came out to Reno. I'd been a private for over a year, but uh, $21 a month was my pay, and it's hard to believe now that we were
It's
even able to
unbelievable.
live on that, but we did, and it wasn't that bad. On Saturday night, we'd take a few nickels and go out and play the slot machines and have a glass of beer
Grandma had a
and
glass of beer?
yes, she did.
You're kidding me.
No, no, she really did, and we partied on not very much.
What'd
you
you do with David?
I'm trying to remember
Was this
for
before
sure,
he
but
was
I think
born?
we had a lady there at the house that was always glad to take care of him. And later on, then we lived in Dallas, Texas, the last year, and there was a couple there that they just more or less adopted David. They just thought he was wonderful. They had been unable to have children. But,
Now, when the war was over, Grandpa, and you went into the reserves, did you begin working at Allison's then? Not too soon after 45?
let's see. Yes, I worked with the Indianapolis Life Insurance Company full time from 45 to 48. Then I went with the Allison Division of General Motors in 1948, and I was with them then, and in the Air Force Reserve. Commissioned in 1950 as a second lieutenant, then went back on active duty in 51 and ended up in Korea during that 21 months that I was on active duty.
You served 21 months
Uh-huh.
in Korea,
No, served a year in Korea.
and then the rest of the time.
Yeah, yeah. The rest of the time I was with the 434th at Columbus, Indiana.
And what was Korea like? I mean, where were you? Do you,
Well, I was with
Korea's always been talked about as the war that people don't remember.
Yeah,
you know,
I
but it was
know.
a very important
Yeah, yeah.
war, and we still have 37,000 U.S. troops there now. I mean, what were your thoughts on the war, and what was it like?
We lost a lot of fine men, crews in combat area. We lost two group commanders while I was there. One on a mission, and one flew into a mountain in Japan. I was with the B-26 outfit, which was originally the 452nd Bomb Wing out of Los Angeles, California, and that's not right. It's Long Beach, California, instead of Los Angeles. And then when they redesignated the 452nd the 17th Bomb Wing, and the 17th Bomb Wing then had quite a history going back to World War II. Some of the 17th people flew with Jimmy Doolittle on that raid over Tokyo. So it has quite a history. And we still have annual conventions every year.
And you've been back.
Yes, we've been back, and this September they'll be in Kansas City, Missouri for their convention.
Have you had a chance to see the Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C.?
No, I have not.
It's
The
pretty
Air Force
impressive.
Museum at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio has quite a section set aside on the Korean history, but I have not seen the memorial in Washington, D.C.
Well, maybe next year at Chad's wedding.
I hope so, yeah.
Definitely.
That's something I'd like to see.
What was life like for Vi and by this time Aunt Melanie Priest, now Melanie Fasone? She was born.
Yeah, in
What was
48.
49? 48? What was life like for Vi? I mean, was it tough?
You mean when I was in
when you were
Korea?
gone for a year?
Well, yeah, they had a pretty rough time, not financially, because by that time I was commissioned and made enough money that I could send money home, and they got along okay that way. But I guess they were lonesome for me, and I know I was lonesome for them.
What was it like when you came home? Do you remember?
Well, yeah, we celebrated a lot and had a lot of fun. Drive-in movies was a big thing for a number of years. When I came home in '53, then in the '50s, we always enjoyed going out to the drive-in movies, which was only 4 miles west
Yeah,
of
I remember
Bainbridge.
where that was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did that a lot.
What were the kids like, Mel and Dave, when they were growing up? When they were growing up?
Well, of course, Dave still remembers Big Walnut Creek today because, like kids my age, they always enjoyed going to the creek, going swimming, and this sort of thing, and going up and down the creek. A lot of wildlife and birds and animals and stuff along the creek. and they were both quite active in activities in school and public speaking, and maybe that's why they both went into radio and television. I don't know, but they ended up at the same university and the same majoring in the same subject, so they did all right.
Well, I'm just thinking. I mean, was it? They both went to college. They both went to a good school.
Yeah, yeah.
And here you have Grandma who came from.
Yeah.
I wasn't even able to finish high school.
That's
But I
right.
know you were able to go to college.
Yes.
But that had to be a rare thing in Bainbridge, or was it a
Yeah.
rare thing?
Well, no, I think by that time a lot of the young people were going off to college. I'll say a fair percentage were going off.
So even
to
from
college.
Bainbridge, you had
Yeah,
some,
even
okay.
for the Bainbridge community, because most of us recognize the importance of an education, in particular college education, and the fact that a lot of us had not been able to get a college degree. It was very important that the children get their college degree.
I just guess I've heard too many Tommy Baker stories from
Oh,
my dad.
Tommy Baker.
What was my next questions?
I might mention about the Obenchain. My mother's family
Yeah.
came from Virginia, Fincastle, Virginia, founded Fincastle, Indiana. And then he was the first rural mail carrier on motorcycle.
Was
in
this your
Putnam County,
mother's
Indiana.
father?
Yes.
Now
my
say that
mother's
again.
father.
He was what?
The first rural mail carrier on motorcycle.
And he came from Virginia.
He came from Virginia.
And how long had his family been in Virginia?
Oh my, I have no idea, because
You
what
don't
I'm well acquainted with my grandparents, but back farther than that, my great grandparents, and that I just don't know that much.
What
about
was Mama's maiden name?
Obenchain?
It was Obenchain.
Oh,
Okay.
Obenchain.
And she married a priest.
Yeah, and she married a priest,
And
right?
what was his full name?
My dad's name,
Yes.
Wilbur Benjamin. And see, my grandfather's Leslie Priest. My grandfather Obenchain was Frederick, and that's how I got the name Frederick Leslie from my two grandfathers.
And when did your father die?
Oh my. I want to say around, if I said 78, 79, someplace in there. No, let's see. Yes, I believe that's right.
I don't
then I think my
remember
mother-
him, Grandpa.
Yeah. And then
I'm sure I
think
met him.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I remember Mama.
And then I'm thinking my mother around 80 or 81, because they were born in the early, like 1901, 1902, 1903, along in through there. So my mother lived about. My dad was in his 70s. My mother about 80, 81. So that's about the time.
And they're buried in the Bainbridge Cemetery?
No,
No.
and see, my mother's buried there in the Bainbridge Cemetery, east of Bainbridge, and my dad is buried with the priest plot in Brick Chapel Cemetery, which is between Bainbridge and Greencastle.
And that's not where Grandma Vi. Grandma Vi is at the Bainbridge.
No, she's at Vi. Vi and I have lots there at Bainbridge,
Yeah.
the cemetery there.
This is kind of a weird question. I mean, what are you most proud of in your life, Grandpa? You've got great kids.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wonderful wife.
I'm proud of the fact that my son David was able to get in the same military organization that I was, and achieve the same rank that I did, and retire as lieutenant colonel, because to my knowledge, we're the only father-son couple in the wing that were officers, and for that length of time, and he was highly thought of, and
You were highly thought of.
well, I'm proud of the fact that it was because of me that he was able to get in, because there was a waiting list, and he was, because the guys knew me, he did receive some favored treatment there. There's no doubt about that, and I'm proud of the fact that I was able to assist him to the extent that, and he reciprocated by doing an outstanding job and being a great Air Force officer. So I'm most proud of that, probably.
What other things in your life do you look back on fondly?
I suppose I can say that every day that I ever worked at Alson's, I enjoyed it. It was never a day that I didn't want to go to work. I enjoyed it. In fact, it got to the point we had so much vacation time that I didn't particularly want to take vacations. I liked my work that well. I didn't want to retire from the military. I was ready to retire from General Motors, but that was for medical reasons. I was not ready to retire from with the military. After 20 years commission service, you have to retire.
Yeah.
So we didn't have any choice there.
And what year did you retire from Allison's?
In 1980, I retired from Allison's. I was having some eye problems at that time, and I was really concerned about my sight, and had a chance to take an early retirement.
And that's when you and Vi, you packed up and you moved down to Six
We
Lakes.
came to Florida. I had heard stories of people, that lived in these mobile home parks and had a swimming pool and played bridge in the afternoon and did things in the evenings. And so we came and looked around and found Six Lakes.
Was Vi, did she want to move, or was it you? Or
Yeah,
did,
I was
did
the
you have
one
to twist her arm?
primarily. And I remember before she passed away, I apologized to her for taking her away from Indiana and her children and grandchildren, and she said, "Don't think about that one more minute. If I hadn't gone to Florida, I would not have learned to play golf." And she had never played golf, thought it was the dumbest thing. She could see that guy chasing a little white ball around a pasture with a stick, but she loved it and
She
loved
was
to
good.
play golf. And yes, she was a good golfer and played every opportunity that she said she had, because she really enjoyed golf.
Now you've lived there now 22 years.
Yes,
And you still
in
love.
December of '80. In fact, it was right at that very time that Leslie was born, and that we were down there and had made an offer on this home. So in December of '80, that's correct.
Well, I've been everywhere in Florida. I've been to Miami and the Panhandle and Sarasota and St. Petersburg and Daytona, and Six Lakes is my favorite.
Oh, really?
I love it. I think
Yeah,
there's
It's
something
a
about
nice,
it.
it's a nice park and nice people, and a lot of activities.
Yeah.
And it's we've been very happy there.
Okay.
Very happy there.
Well, I had another question for you. And I just, you've been able to see so much change in this country. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on, especially after September 11th in 2001, I think everybody's kind of thought about America and what America means. And for many in my generation, we've never had to go through anything like that. Pretty much everything was cozy and good, and this was the first time I think ever we've kind of just had a kick in the butt. And I know you've seen several times in our history where our country's got kind of kicked in the butt and people have had to change. And I just wanted to know what you thought about the United States and America now, and has it changed or?
No, well, I remember one thing, and a lot of people keep wanting to compare it to Pearl Harbor, and I think in a way, we were completely unprepared. We didn't think it could happen. We couldn't be attacked like in Pearl Harbor. We were really more or less inconsiderate of the rest of the world, not concerned about what was going on in the rest of the world. We suddenly discovered that with Pearl Harbor that we could be attacked, and that with this September 11th thing in Washington, D.C. and in New York, now we are we're no longer just complacent. We're more concerned about what can happen, not just to us, but in other people of the world. And I think we have become more understanding, and want to become more understanding of why the United States people are not liked by a lot of people and a lot of nations, and what can we do to improve our relationship with them. And I think we need to. I think over the years that we became selfish and greedy, and we may never, and probably, we may never have the same feelings that we had before, and probably just as well. Because I remember a Canadian on one of our cruises, we were throwing coins over the side of the ship for the native boys to dive down and get from deep in the water. He made the comment that over the years, we, the United States and Canada, have been very selfish, very greedy, and that someday we would pay the price. That was his words. And it looks like now that we are and will continue to be paying the price for some of our selfishness and greediness and inconsideration of the other peoples of the world.
But surely, while I agree with you to a certain extent, you know, we keep, while some of our policies and things might not be good, I don't know if we deserve to have anything inflicted like that, planes flying into buildings and, you know.
No, I'm sure of that. And it's hard to understand that this can be done with a religious theme or lesson or education, and which is certainly not my understanding of what religion is and what God would want us to do and how He would want us to act and so forth.
Do you think America is still as strong as ever? Do you think our belief system in
Well,
liberty and freedom?
Yeah, it seems that during these the peace times, of course, we kind of let the military go downhill, and we lose a lot of our preparedness. And then in a situation like that, I don't think we will ever permit ourselves to become as unprepared as we were both at Pearl Harbor and again on September 11th. And I think we, being combat ready and being able to defend ourselves or fight a war any place in the world is always going to be uppermost in many people's minds and will be tremendously important to everyone in the country.
Yeah. Well, Grandpa, I'm about out of tape. So I want to thank you. We're filming this in South Carolina. We've just spent 7 days together in a house. We actually had a great time. I don't know if we bored you or you got bored, but
no.
we had a great time, and we leave tomorrow. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to do this, because all we have is a written record. You've got some stuff, but you're the reason this family exists. So
well.
I mean, really, look how you had 14, 15 people out on the beach last night, and you're kind of the guy that made all those babies.
Well, I guess that's a major accomplishment then, and
it is a major accomplishment.
I'm proud of my family.
Well,
I am.
You should be. Well,
Yeah.
Grandpa, thank you very much.
Well, thank you
All
for
right.
the opportunity.